Shortly after beginning my career as a CrossFit Games athlete, I attended my CrossFit Level 1 seminar. There, I became absolutely enchanted with the definition of fitness and health that Coach Greg Glassman developed. In particular, the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum took hold of a special place in my heart. A couple years later, I began my training to become a physician, and the gap between wellness and fitness in the U.S. healthcare system became gapingly apparent. Instead of maximizing health, we're simply fighting disease, much of which can be prevented in the first place. I believe every person has a right to basic knowledge of how to care for themselves and maximize the potential of their mind, body, and spirit. Following the conclusion of my career as a competitive CrossFit Games athlete, here I hope to bring you influential individuals and ideas that will help you live healthier, more fulfilling lives. I'm Julie Fouché, and I'd like to welcome you to Pursuing Health. Welcome, everyone, to the third episode of Pursuing Health. I'm really excited about this next episode because here I had the opportunity to sit down with one of my very early role models as a CrossFit Games athlete, Lindsey Smith. Lindsey was a 3-sport Division I athlete at DePaul University, and then she went on to compete in the CrossFit Games all the way from 2009 through 2012, so 4 years in a row. She now lives in Columbus, Ohio, where she's the athletic director of the Wellington School, and she raises her 2 young girls along with her husband, Webb. She continues to work on weekends as well, as she's a longtime member of the Level 1 seminar staff, and on top of that, she's also pursuing her MBA. So Lindsey has always been an inspiration to me for her competitive drive and the way she's able to juggle and prioritize so many different areas of her life. So here I had the chance to sit down with her and ask her a little bit more about what drives her and how she manages to do it all. If you like what you hear, please head over to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast and give it a rating. And with that, let's get started with episode 3 with Lindsey Smith. Welcome to episode 3 of Pursuing Health. We're very excited to be here with Lindsey Smith. We just finished a Level 1 seminar here in Columbus, and now we're here at her home, just going to chat a little bit. I'm excited because Lindsey was one of the women that I watched in 2009 at the CrossFit Games that inspired me when I was very first starting out with CrossFit. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about. But do you want to start off by telling us, so you were a 3-sport Division I athlete in college.
Yeah.
And which sports were they?
Soccer, basketball, and track and field.
Wow. So that obviously is crazy in itself, but how did you make the transition, and what was the story between by the time your college athletic career ended, and then how did you get into CrossFit?
Sure. So, sports that I had always been super passionate about and had always trained and loved the weight room and conditioning and things like that. But I loved it because of how it made me a better athlete. And that was really why I pursued a lot of, being as fit as I could be, even at the college level. After college, I was a little bit lost. I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I actually considered training for a fitness competition, and I tried that for maybe a month, and it just wasn't working for me. I never worked out for aesthetic purposes. It was always just a little bit of a byproduct. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of thinking about that. Then I actually ended up getting pregnant with Alexis, who's our 7-year-old daughter. But during our pregnancy, my husband and I went and saw the movie 300. Okay. And so Webb was watching the movie, and he's just wondering how that many guys looked the way they looked. Mm-hmm. And they kind of started researching it, found out they were doing a derivative of CrossFit out of Jim Jones. And so the more he started researching it, he found that actually was originally associated with Coach Glassman. And so through that, he stumbled upon CrossFit.com. Mm-hmm. And so during my pregnancy, Webb was doing CrossFit. And, I was kind of pretty skeptical at that point. I was kind of the typical wife that's shut up about this CrossFit already. And, I was all these pull-ups and, despite how strong of an athlete I was, I could not do dead hang pull-ups. I'm a tall, long, lanky individual, and that was just something I really struggled with. And so, I just kind of dismissed it as silly or whatever. And then after I had the baby, like he and I would work out together, just, something we had in common. And he kept trying to get me to buy into the idea. And I was very resistant for a really long time. And there was a point in time where I was like trying to do CrossFit, but I was also trying to supplement it with like mileage and other workouts. And so I really wasn't seeing the benefit because if I did a heavy day, I'd be like, oh, now I have to go run 5 miles. And then I'd come back the next day, and if I saw something like a Filthy 50 or a chipper, like I was just totally smashed and had nothing to give. So long story short, Webb tells me that there's a competition. And I'm like, I like competition, right? So he ended up signing us up, and this was like 3 months out from the regionals in 2009. And I'm like, shoot, if I'm going to a CrossFit competition, I better like do some CrossFit.
So it was the regionals that he signed you up for?
Yeah.
Oh,
regionals in 2009. Yeah. And I mean, it certainly has changed tremendously since then, but yes, it was regionals. And so I was like, okay, I should probably start doing CrossFit if I'm going to a CrossFit competition. Up to that point, we had done all of our workouts either in our garage with extremely limited equipment, like a stuffed backpack with books as a wall, things like that, or at a local LA Fitness. Had not stepped foot into a gym, which then led to the competition. Where I qualified for the games, which is kind of crazy. Like I don't even know how that happened to this day. But that was the first time I had stepped foot in an affiliate. And at that moment is when I totally just fell in love with the community and, what CrossFit was all about. So, yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. And then you went on, did you not place, what place did you get that year, your first year in the games?
Fifth.
Right? So not too shabby for just stepping foot in affiliate.
So after I qualified, at that point there was just still a ton of stuff I had no idea how to do. I was very poor at the deadlift. It just was not something I had done. Even in college, we did more Olympic lifting, things like that. I did not know how to do a muscle up. My first chest to bar pull up was during a regional workout, things like that. So I kind of realized I had to get on a fast track, to get ready for the games. And then the best way I can describe the 2009 experience is it was kind of just survival of the fittest. Like that was the first year they just threw a ton of stuff our way. And I think that my experience as a heptathlete, particularly in track and field, I was really probably more prepared than the average athlete at that time for just the ups and downs of competition. Here's a workout, take an hour rest. Okay, here's another event. And so I feel like I was really able to build on my previous experience and then just kind of depend on athleticism to get me through. But it's funny. I would never trade that 2009 experience and the opportunity to compete at the ranch and just like the rawness of it for any experience I had afterwards. It was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it was amazing to watch. And I remember watching you guys run up the hill. And since I think last year, I've had the opportunity just to visit the ranch and see the hill in person. And I remember watching it thinking, oh my gosh, how I could never do that. It looks so awful. So it looked like quite an experience that year.
Yeah, that first run, I don't even remember how far it was, but I just remember like thinking that was pretty terrible. So yeah, you were on point with that.
Wow. And then after that, you were just hooked and you were full speed ahead games.
Yeah. So, after I qualified and went to the games in 2009, I was just kind of like in this euphoric state and I could not get enough. And so, I was training, signed up for like every local competition. We were living in Texas at the time that we could find. Around that time, I guess it was at the games, Webb and I connected with the crew that was at CrossFit Central at the time. And we ended up moving to Austin, in large part to help support my training at that time. And so then I was training with Carrie Kepler and Lisa Teal, who I ended up qualifying for the games for the following year, or with the following year. So just had a great community of athletes and training partners. And we were just all in at that point.
That's awesome. And then you went on to compete the next 3 years, so 10, 11, 12. And during that whole time, you're also balancing a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, in addition to CrossFit, actually, when I first got into CrossFit, I was working for a large engineering firm in Houston, Texas, sitting in a cubicle, 40 to 60 hours a week, and just knew that was not what I wanted to do. So I was kind of segueing anyways, looking for jobs within education. And I actually landed a 7th grade science teacher position in Houston, but we had made this decision to move to Austin. So we kind of went through this transition. I found a PE position in Austin. We have our daughter at this time, so I'm still kind of juggling, being a teacher, but I still had the summers off and some more flexibility, being a mom and then training. And that just kind of evolved as I kind of saw some new, set some new goals and things I wanted to pursue, to becoming a full-time athletic director, which I was for the last couple of years that I was competing. And still do today. And so, yeah, it's always going to kind of been, a lot going on. Yeah. But, I think with the experience I had in college, like that was just kind of, I felt at my best when I was pursuing several things at one time. And it also, it made me very regimented in my schedule and things like that. And so, whereas at times I would see other athletes, even athletes I was training with, that maybe CrossFit is the only thing that they were pursuing. And, there were times I would really take their training for granted. Whereas for me, I was like, okay, and I have at that point a 2 or 3 year old, waiting at home for me to start dinner, to wash her, to put her to bed, a husband to spend time with, certain expectations to fulfill at the school. So every minute that I had to train, I absolutely had to make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. That's something I think I've noticed over the past few years is people always say, whatever you have to do, it takes up the time that you allow it. So yeah. Like you said, when I have all the time in the world to train, I can be at the gym all day. But if I only have 3 hours, I can get it in 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever it might be. Sure. So I think that's definitely true. So now you're balancing, now you have 2 daughters. You have, you're still an athletic director here in Columbus. And well, this was, I guess, for the past few years when you were also training full-time for the games and on level 1 staff. Yeah. So during that time period where you were also, you were training for the games, you had all these other things going on. What was a typical day in your life like? How did you fit it all in?
Well, to be honest, there really has never been a typical day. And I'm on the tail end now of finishing my MBA as well. So, it's like, if I think about it, like you just mentioned it, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, and it's just totally overwhelming and like kind of when I want to have a panic attack. But if I just wake up every single morning, whether it's now or a few years back, I'd just be like, okay, what do I have to do today? Mm-hmm. And so I'd be like, I need to take care of this and and so I would just kind of look at what I had to do today. Where can I fit my training in? Whether it's 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. And that's when it would happen. And I guess that was one area that was kind of unique and people would kind of ask me about it a lot, or how the heck, is I would train a lot between 9 and midnight. And that's just kind of what time would allow. And especially with being a mom, I felt a little bit selfish to take time in the middle of the day when my daughter hadn't seen me, because I'm a working mom and I might have the seminars on the weekend. And so, yeah, it was just a balance, and it just something, for me, I knew I was committed. I knew I was all in. And even to this day, like getting my workouts in, it's just a non-negotiable. But to tell you that, there's a typical day, it doesn't exist. It's just wake up. What does that day look like? When can I fit it in? And just make it happen.
Okay. And so then you had your daughter Adriana about a year ago, right?
Yeah, right at a year ago.
And then this year it seems like you made a very conscious decision. Okay, I'm not going to try to compete this year. I'm going to, just focus on all these other things going on. What was it like to make that decision?
Yeah, it was hard, and still is hard. And sometimes I still wrestle with it a little bit, or if I go crush a workout, I'm like, what am I doing? I should be pursuing this. But in all honesty, for me, it was just kind of evaluating where I am in life now and what my priorities are. And to be honest with you, the last year I competed, I guess was 2013, and I missed going to the games by one spot, and that was super devastating. But I also think it was a huge blessing, because I can tell you, we wouldn't have Adriana right now if I had made it. You know, it's like you always, for the last like 3 years, you know, it was a 5-year stint for me. And like the last 3 years of it, I'd be like, oh, I think this is the last one. We want to, you know, have another child. So, right. You know, I know myself well enough to know if I would have made it again, it would have been, you know, another year. So I just try to consider that a blessing. But, you know, there was part of me, and still is, like, maybe I still have it, this and that. But, you know, I had a real aha moment one day. It was right when I had kind of gotten back into training, and our oldest daughter, Alexis, and I were, I train a lot in my garage, and we were out back, and I was doing some heavy back squats, and she was wondering, and I've told you this story before, but she was wondering if I would kick the soccer ball with her between my sets. And I found myself like, no, like, leave me alone, you know, like, I'm training, you know how it is when I'm training. And then I was kind of like, what the heck am I doing? You know, like, and I look back at all of these really cool experiences I had, whether it was as a high school athlete, college athlete, or even in CrossFit, and I attribute them in large part to the sacrifices my parents made. And to be honest, those sacrifices came when I was about 7, 8 years old. So for me, it's, you know, it has the time come that, you know, I'm in some way taking something away from her. And so that was like a question I really had to wrestle with. And you know, it's tough for me particularly. I wish, you know, I was even talking about it today. I wish I could get to the point where I'd be like, you know what, I'm just going to do the best I can, and let's just see how this goes, you know? And I think anyone that can do that, like, a lot of us probably envy that person. Yeah. I think that's an awesome mentality. But man, I'm not there yet, you know? And I find to this day, like, if I'm not where I was, then it's just like this frustration and this, like, disdain.
Right. You know you're capable of
more.
More.
So I'm still kind of wrestling with that. You know, if people be like, are you retired? And I, like, for some reason I won't use that word.
It's too permanent.
It is. So, yeah, I kind of am where I am, but, you know, I'm happy with the dynamic of our family, and I'm enjoying life and enjoying still being, you know, a part of the community with the level 1 seminars and things like that. So yeah, I'm just kind of am where I am right now.
Right. That was going to be my next question about, obviously, I've talked to people about this before. If you have that competitive gene in you,
yeah,
it's like you're going to find some way to use it, some way to compete. So are there any other ways that you think that you'll end up pursuing? I don't know. Maybe there'll be team in the future, or masters farther down the line. There's always possibilities, but.
For now, it's just beating my husband in the garage.
Perfect. That's one of the things I love about CrossFit is you don't have to be at the games for it to be
like competitive.
It kind of fills that void.
Yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yeah, you know, I've kind of just taken this mentality right now that I'm like, I feel like I'm just kind of competing in life, you know? Yeah. And like, as opposed to like training's like this number one thing that I'm like totally pursuing and want to be the best at, and everything else is just like, I'm going to do as good as I can. I feel like I kind of flipped a switch and like, man, I want to be the best mom I can be, and I want to be, you know, the best leader at the school that I can be, and I want to be, and so I feel like it's competition in a very different sense, but I feel like for now, that's kind of what I allow to feed that void, I guess.
And how do you approach workouts now? Do you have a specific plan that you're going with, or is it like when you get to the garage at night, you just decide what it's going to be?
Yeah. Actually, I've switched from nights to mornings, so I will say that. Yeah, Webb actually, that he got me on that, so he trains in the morning, and I've bought into that, and actually I enjoy that way better. So so that's good. I got that going. You know, we do a lot of main site. We have a good amount of equipment now, and like a pretty decent gym, I could call it. Not stuffed backpacks with books. And we'll do a lot of main site. I actually really like programming. So, and I feel like it's kind of an art and a skill. And so I will create a lot of our workouts, and I log them and stuff and keep track of what I've done. But it's funny because, you know, training the way I had for the games for so long, it's like there were these certain things that I wasn't very good at that I, every 3 days, if they weren't in my programming, I'd like feel guilty and, you know, I would dread. And now I'm like, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that. You know, I still have a well-balanced program, but there are certain days that, if there's something I don't want to do, I just don't.
Yeah, it's
And
nice
I kind of enjoy that
that
too.
you have now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And you mentioned a little bit earlier that you're also pursuing an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to everything else,
Yeah.
So what are your long-term goals as far as your career as an athletic director, or how do you hope to use that?
Yeah. Well, one thing for certain is education is really valued within education. So, being mediocre is like, that's one thing I've just like never been okay with. And I don't think, people probably laugh, but like, I don't think it takes too much to be like better than mediocre, and that's just kind of the mentality I have about life. So pursuing the MBA is kind of, it has a couple of different layers to it, I guess. One is to be in like an administrative position where you're leading and other people, are looking up to you. I think that it's certainly valuable in that sense. And then also, if I ever, and I don't know whether I'll pursue this at some point or not, but if I ever wanted to go to the college level, perhaps, that would be a really important piece of making that transition. And in addition to that, I just feel like it's something that our girls, like, I feel like society's getting to a point where undergrad is what a high school diploma was not long ago. And so I want our girls to, I'm just trying to set that example for them, I guess, that they'll be like, I saw mom do it. And hopefully maybe they'll get it earlier in life so they don't have to juggle 52 million things. But they're like, you know what, I saw mom work through that and do her homework and like all this stuff that, I took them both to turn in a final with me one day because I didn't want to pay for a babysitter and all I had to do was drop it off, But I'm like, that's instilling memories about just like consistency and persistence and dedication, hopefully that, will make an impact in their life as well. So it's kind of got a couple different layers to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember, I don't know if your mom was working when you were growing up, but for me, that was always something my mom felt bad. Oh, I have to miss, I'm not home during the summer. She always, it seemed like, was very guilty about a lot of that stuff. And I said, no, I always saw you working really hard and enjoying what you did. And that made more of an impact on me, I think, than anything. So.
Yeah. And I think, and just, just empowerment, I think that it's like super valuable and so hopefully kind of laying that seed, I don't know, planting that seed, yes. I guess.
Wonderful. All right, so I want to finish with 3 questions. So
sure.
First one is going to be 3 things that you do on a regular basis that you think have the biggest positive impact on your health, or your family's health, I guess, in this case.
Okay. One thing I would say, and it probably sounds a little bit cliche, is just like being committed to, for me, like working out is a huge like stress reliever and things like that. Like I just feel better about myself. So being committed to making sure that happens. I'll hear people that live similar, very busy lifestyles like me, and they're like, I just can't fit it in. But to me, the analogy I often use is like working out to me is kind of like brushing my teeth. It's like
I like that.
I'm not gonna go to bed on any given day without like having brushed my teeth at some point in the day. And so working out, I just view it the same. It's like that much of a priority that has just got to be part of your day. And so I think that that's one thing, kind of a pillar. Another I would say is just taking time and I am guilty of not doing this at times, but taking time for the things that matter most. And for me, that's really just my family. And so, not getting so busy that, like, for example, I could answer emails all day, every day. Like, that's just kind of the nature of my career. And taking time and being like, wow, I have not spent time with the girls today. Like, put my phone down, pick up a book, and just, and I think that's rejuvenating too. So, kind of, those are both like time management pieces, but in different sense. Right. Take a step back, spend time on things that really matter to you, because I think that's kind of what keeps you healthy mentally, and then also being committed and consistent in your workouts. And then I guess the last thing that I would kind of put in there is to find friends or family members or partner in crime, whatever it may be, that has the same passions and values that you do. fortunately for me, that's my husband,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he values fitness and he values eating well. And so that works well for us because that's always going to be a common ground we have. But, you know, even if you don't have that within your own home, I think you need to find that in your community in some extent. It can be a friend, a family member, like I said, whatever it may be. But I think that's another really essential piece of kind of staying on track.
Right, having that community and that support system.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest things about CrossFit.
Right.
You know,
Walk into your local affiliate. There
absolutely.
it is. Okay, how about one thing that you think would probably have a big impact on your health, but you just haven't been able to implement it for one reason or another?
I would say, to be honest, I would.
It's okay if you can't. This is a hard question.
It's a hard question. Well, I was going to say, like, you know, I feel like I have so many things going on at all times and have for like these last few years of my life to like shut the chapter on one of them and then not necessarily like go find something else to like grab and fill its place, you know? But also like that's kind of who I am. So to say that, I'm like, does that not even make sense? But I think there probably would be some value in that. And like, learning when and how to close doors, and maybe for me that's even like the competition thing, you know.
So you are learning.
Yeah. So I'm trying to be more introspective about that. Yeah, for a second I was gonna say something about diet, but I don't know. I was like, I'm kind of a big like 80-20 rule, like 80% of the time do the right thing, 20%, you know, live a little. So
I think that's best for overall mental health, anyways.
Yeah.
Last question: what does a healthy life look like to you?
A healthy life, in my opinion, really encompasses how you feel about yourself. So it's not about what your PR is or what your body fat percentage is or exactly what you're eating on a daily basis or how much sleep you're getting. It's just genuinely how you feel about yourself. So, you know, it's being confident. It's being excited to wake up every morning. And so, in my opinion, you know, regardless of what my numbers are, how I'm doing in the gym, and certainly that's going to have its ebbs and flows. It's just, you know, am I waking up? Am I excited? Do I feel good about myself? Do I feel good about the day I'm about to attack? And I think for me, that's kind of like the ultimate pursuit of a healthy lifestyle.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that's kind of, I guess, your benchmark. Okay, if that's not going well, you can look at other things. You know, what else is going on in my life that can get me there? Yeah,
and I think anytime, you know, in life you're at a place where like you feel unhealthy or you feel unhappy even, you got to take a step back and you're like, okay, what do I need to change to get from A to B? It's really easy for us to get stuck, you know, in this place where we're unhappy, and rather than like making a change, to just kind of think that it's going to change organically. But I think that usually it probably does not. Like, we actually have to make a decision to make a change.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was our third episode of the of Pursuing Health with Julie Fouché. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. It is always amazing for me to talk to people like Lindsey who are competing in so many different areas of their lives and setting a great example of health to their kids. If you like what you hear, please head over to iTunes and remember to subscribe and rate the podcast. I'd also love to hear all of your feedback. So if you can, leave some comments under this post on juliefouché.com. I'd love to hear any ideas or suggestions that you have. You can also reach out to me on social media using the hashtag JFHealth, and I will try to respond to you there as well. So I'm Julie Fouché, and we'll see you next time on Pursuing Health.